The goal of the study that we did was to try to assess what the impacts of No Child Left Behind have been on teachers' work attitudes. We have about a decade worth of experience now with No Child Left Behind, which is the Bush administration's signature reform package. And there's a lot of interest now in the research and policy communities in trying to understand what the impacts of that law have been. A lot of the conventional wisdom that you hear is that there have been these big negatives, that the law has really hurt the teaching profession, it's made teachers' lives worse, it's made hurt job satisfaction, job morale. And so what we wanted to try to do was test whether that conventional wisdom was in fact correct. A lot of prior studies in No Child Left Behind have attempted to test what the impact of No Child Left Behind has been on schools or on student achievement. And we really wanted to focus on teachers' job attitudes, teachers' perceptions of their work environment. So we looked at 4 waves of survey data collected by the U.S. Department of Education, spanning the period about 1994 to 2008, the years leading up to No Child Left Behind and the years just after No Child Left Behind's implementation. And we used those survey data to try both to look descriptively at teachers' job attitudes over that time period, but then also to use some statistical techniques to try to tease out what the impact of No Child Left Behind specifically was on teachers' work attitudes and teachers' perceptions. So I'd say there's 2 major takeaways from the study. The first one is just a descriptive one, which is that the conventional wisdom about teacher job attitudes is that teachers' perceptions of their jobs have actually been getting worse over this time period. And the survey data say that just isn't true. Over the time spanning the implementation of No Child Left Behind, that teachers' job satisfaction was actually going up. Teachers' intent to remain in the profession was actually going up. Several of the antecedents to job satisfaction that we looked at were also increasing. So teachers were saying they felt more supported by administrators, and they were feeling more supported by parents, for example. So that was one major finding. The other one was that No Child Left Behind itself just didn't seem to have very much impact. So we were expecting, based on the conventional wisdom, to see these big negative impacts of No Child Left Behind on teacher job satisfaction or intent to remain in the profession, and we just didn't see that. We took a number of tacks to try to ferret this out. So we compared states that did and didn't have prior accountability systems and looked at how they changed with No Child Left Behind implementation. We looked by strength of pre-existing accountability system. We also looked at changes in the trends for high and low income schools, under the expectation that low income schools were probably impacted more by No Child Left Behind than high income schools because of the link to Title I funding. And across all of those different approaches, we just didn't see much impact. The other piece to emphasize is that these results are on average, so it's not as if No Child Left Behind hasn't made some teachers' lives tougher. Almost certainly it's made teachers' work lives tougher in some schools with some kinds of kids. What we're showing is that on average the law doesn't seem to have had the big negative impacts that people have expected. A lot of the rhetoric around No Child Left Behind is that the law has had these big negative impacts on teachers' work lives, on teachers' propensities to remain in the profession, and so forth. And I think what policymakers need to know is that the evidence just doesn't bear that out. It's important not to make policy changes on the basis of anecdote. It's really important to look systematically at the evidence, and in this particular case, the evidence just doesn't support the idea that there have been these big negative impacts on teachers. I think the findings matter in the context of reauthorization of No Child Left Behind, which is a conversation we've been having for 7 or 8 years at this point. Policymakers don't know how the law should be changed, how the law should be modified. But I think it's important to go into those conversations with full information. And so it's important for the research community to be kind of delving into what have been the impacts of the law on schools, on students, on teachers, so that those conversations are based on more complete information about what the impacts of the law have been, so that we can think about how the law should be changed.